Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode. Today, we are going to be interviewing the 2024 IPF M4 World Champion, newly crowned World Champion. So we're excited to have him on the show today. We got an awesome one coming up for you. Let's go. Hey, Dad.
Hey,
Welcome to the show.
thank you.
Everybody, this is Bob Moore, recently crowned M4 IPF World Champion as of just a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
I tried to convince him to wear his medals for the show, but it didn't go over. So you gotta tell me, I've never been that high. I've never been that far in the powerlifting world. How was it standing on the world podium as number one? How was it?
Amazing, exhilarating. Really just a great sense of accomplishment. And, looking at it like, okay, all that effort was really worth it. It was worth it. And it was just, going back to nationals in Austin, Texas, that was in May. I finished first there, and it was just such an honor to be invited to be on Team USA.
Team USA, current national champion, current world champion. And this is the pinnacle of the sport.
Well, kind of like a lifelong dream to represent the United States on a world stage.
Oh,
And it was incredible.
really, man, that is wild. And now I know, but everybody else might know, you're 71.
Yes.
And I have watched you in the past couple of years break PRs from when you were 21. So this is like the fountain of youth here. This is unheard of. If you weren't my dad, I'd say you were from a different planet. So how has your training changed in the last 50 years from, starting, right around, I don't know, earlier than 21, but from 21 to 71, how has it changed?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think thinking back, the early 20s was a lot of work on hypertrophy, just trying to get stronger, really. So the workouts then really focused on that, just overall strength. Yes, doing the core lifts, but really overall strength. And the other thing, when you're in your early 20s or mid 20s, you can miss a few workouts and you will get right back to it. You are so strong. The other difference, honestly, is, when you are young and you are doing that, you're not so focused. You should be, but you're not so focused on technique. And as I've gotten older, proper technique has become so important. And it's made the difference. It has made the big difference for me in recent years.
So you think consistency, first thing you touched on was consistency. So consistency is more important as, we age through the sport of strength?
No doubt. No doubt. If you stay with this for a number of years and you are consistent, you're going to build a base of strength that will always be there. It would not be easy for somebody who might just be starting in this in their 60s, to get that much strength that you accumulate over 40, 50 years of doing this. So that's really, really important.
Now, 50 years of training for strength. Talking about consistency, over the last 50 years, has there ever been huge lapses in your training or big time off, or anything, or has it been pretty much consistent for the past 5 decades?
I would say pretty consistent. There were times, life gets in the way. You have a career, you've got a job, you've got family. So there are going to be some lapses. There are. What I have found, though, is we bounce back pretty strong, pretty quickly from that if we've got a good base that we've worked on for a number of years. So it's certainly going to be easier for somebody who has done this for the number of years that I have to bounce back if you have a lapse. But certainly there have been over the years. It's going to happen.
In our sport, the foot's always to the floor, and if you drive your car with your foot to the floor all the time, something's going to break. That, I mean, you've had 5 decades of, you've had your injuries along the way, but you've had 5 decades of nothing major. How have you accomplished this? Because I know a lot of people in our sport, they'll end up on the floor and there's a serious injury and a serious surgery that is required to fix it. How have you done that? How have you avoided that?
I have to say good fortune. I've been fortunate to be healthy. Now, there have been times when there are injuries. It's going to happen. So you want to make sure that you give your body time to recover. But once you are recovered, then get right back to it. Get back to it. And again, I think if you build a good foundation through consistency, you're going to bounce back quicker. You really are. You're going to bounce back pretty quick.
Now, speaking of recovery, aside from injuries, on your day-to-day, 21 to 71, recovery can't be the same speed. It can't be the same. So what is your go-to routine for recovery at 71 years old, still,
Right.
Pushing 1,100-pound totals?
Sure. Well, let's just use this most recent period of training. My coach, created a program for me 16 weeks out from Worlds. And that program was varied. We worked on, upper body max efforts. We did conditioning. We do lower body max efforts. And then we did accessory work. We did speed work where we're using band resistance. So you put this program together for me, and it was steady for 16 weeks. But I still had the recovery on conditioning days, on accessory days. Still pushed it, but the recovery was built into the program. So I think that's important to have a varied program like that, where you're going to do max effort upper, max effort lower, conditioning day, accessory day. And I think another thing that's really made the difference, a big difference, is doing the speed work, doing the band work, resistance bands. So I think that's made a big difference. And you think back to my early 20s, I didn't do any of that stuff. It was, really a lot of hypertrophy work, doing the main lifts, doing the auxiliaries or the accessories, but not to the extent that we're doing them now. And I think that makes a big difference as you grow older. I really do.
Now, do you think, in terms of recovery, you have a lot of athletes, in probably then too, but in today's world, think that recovery is you and your couch, that this is what recovery is, right? I'm going to sit on my butt until I feel better. We work from a programming standpoint of active recovery.
Yep.
Conditioning days are also active recovery days. If you're comparing the two, if you had a day on the couch, which I know I don't remember you ever having a day on the couch, but if you ever had a day on the couch compared to a day of active recovery, the next day, which one is going to make you feel better? Which one do you feel better?
Yeah.
After?
No doubt, the active recovery, you're going to feel better. The other thing too is if you take days off, several days off, I have found that as I get older, I need to have a little bit of time to get back to where I was. Now, you experience that when you're younger as well, but as we get older, we need to try to maintain consistency, and having active recovery is much better than just resting. I mean, just think about where, just before we do a competition, the week out, you're going to do light work. You're going to do light reps, that type of thing. And I have difficulty totally resting for 3 or 4 days before a competition. You should do it. You really do. You should do it. And I have said to you, I've preached to you over the years, if you're a week out, you're not going to get any stronger in that week. You're also not going to get any weaker. So you've done that work before the competition. have the confidence going in that you'll do fine. But it's still difficult to sit there
Oh,
and rest
I
for a
bet.
few days before the competition.
Now, we're talking about incredible numbers at 71 years old. I mean, we're at a 425 squat, a 315 bench, a 425 deadlift. I mean, these are big numbers if you were 21, but you're not. You're 71. Now, you've told us, 50 years, no major injuries, meaning something that's required surgery, etc. Training consistently for 50 years, world champion, breaking new PRs. I mean, the question has to come up, about performance enhancing drugs. It has to come up. You have to get asked about it because you're not the norm. So, I got to ask you, what's the experience? Do we have any experience with PEDs or any sort of hormone replacement therapy, anything of that nature?
No. No, I've never done it. I've always been very conservative about what I put in my body. Now, over the years, yeah, I've worked out with people who have used PEDs, and they even approached me. Boy, with the numbers you're doing, Bob, you could really, I never really had that interest. For me, and I guess a little bit of a purist, I want to see what can I do, what actually can I do, and I like to challenge myself. That over the years, I've done that so many times. But no PEDs, no HRT or anything like that.
So, I mean, you kind of touched on it before, but direct question. I mean, how do you account for breaking lifetime PRs at 71?
Adam, I go back to what I said a little bit ago, and that is that I have come to realize that proper technique is critical to doing that. When you're younger, like I said, you should still make sure you're using the proper technique, but you can kind of get away with a little bit of that with your strength, with your young strength that you have. And to be able to have personal bests when you're in your 70s, yes, you have to have the strength, but your technique has to be spot on. And I don't care how old you are, you can still learn. And in my 70s, I have learned technique things that I can do for each lift, certain techniques that will maximize the lift. Now, I could also say, well, I should have pushed myself more when I was younger. But no, I think that's the big difference. Technique is critical as you get older. And I would say that, to masters 1, 2, 3 as well, 40s, 50s, 60s, same type of thing. Work on that technique. Make sure that you have the proper technique.
So finding that coach, that trainer to put you in the right direction of technique. This has to be one of the key points that you just said, because we're taking and comparing 21 to 71 and breaking new PRs 50 years later because of technique, because of improved technique, because of improved training knowledge too. I mean, we know a lot more now than we did 50 years ago.
We sure do.
Training, there is one way to go, and this is the way we trained, and that was it. And unfortunately, a lot of coaches today still do the same thing because that's what they grew up learning, and nobody knows how to read a book, so then it just stays the same. So speaking of a supportive environment, this to people like us is a blast. This is the best part of every day is coming in to train. But 50 years later, 50 years of going 100%, 50 years of putting your foot to the floor in the gym, why do you still do it? I mean, is it just because, oh my gosh, this is just as fun as it was 50 years ago? Or is this that competitive drive, that competitive fire? I mean, what is it? Why do you keep doing it?
I think it's a little of all of that. I am having so much fun doing this. And quite frankly, I've always pushed myself. And this is really, it's great to see that at my age, I can still reach personal bests. I can still push myself to get to a new level. And I've always been goal driven. So whatever that next goal is, I'm going to try to push toward that. But I'm having fun with it. I enjoy seeing the gains. I do. And I mean, I think that competitive urge is still there. I can tell you right now who the other three Masters 493 kilo lifters are that would push me, and I would push them. I can tell you who they are. So yeah, I think it's a little of all of that. But ultimately, I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun. We happen to have a very supportive atmosphere at this gym, and that makes a big difference. When you come in and you've got other people working out and you see that they're as committed as you are, that makes a big difference. It really does. And I'll tell you, at Worlds, I met so many lifters, so many power lifters from around the world. And
So cool.
it was a strong camaraderie there. There really was. Just a great group of people. I did not see one person that had any kind of an attitude. They were excited to be there. They're excited to represent their country. Open arms.
That's neat.
Welcome you into their group. Want to have dinner with you. I mean, it was great. It was great. So there's this industry, this powerlifting brotherhood and sisterhood is powerful. It really is.
So let's talk about training for a minute.
Yep.
So if we really look on your social media today, and social media doesn't show the whole picture, but if you go into any commercial gym, you'll see it. If you talk to powerlifters at meets, you'll hear it. Really, the big training strategy right now is we'll go squat, bench, deadlift, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, and the other days, we're going to sit on our butt and eat cheeseburgers. And if you're talking to somebody just coming in the sport or an experienced lifter, you're sitting here with 50 years of success and now at the pinnacle of the sport. So let's touch on that training. When you look at training like that, if you have somebody coming in, let's take that example. You have somebody coming in, 25 years old, and has their own idea because they've seen it on Instagram about this is what I need to do to train. What do you think in terms of programming, strength gains? Is there a strategy for it? Does it always have to vary? Is it supposed to be squat, bench, and deadlift all the time? What do you think?
Been there and done that. The 3 core lifts are critical. You need to do those 3 core lifts. But I think you're leaving some stuff on the table if that's all you do. I have seen in my history people plateau when they are just doing those 3 core lifts. And quite frankly, your body asks for variety. Going way back into the 70s when you had pumping iron and it was challenge your muscles, give them different ways. And I think it's important. I think you have to do that. So I think the training nowadays is much more comprehensive than it was back then. And I am an example of what can happen with that new training. Having conjugate training and making sure that you are challenging your muscles in different ways. Doing, resistance band work, doing speed work. You add that to your arsenal of the big 3, you're going to gain. You're going to improve.
That's a big aspect of people's training that they miss is velocity-based training. Velocity-based training may not be for everyone, but for strength progression in our sport, it's vital. So your most basic equation, right? The production of force is the mass times the acceleration. So if we're not using and working on the acceleration part, then we're missing a lot of that force. We're leaving a lot on the table. velocity-based training has really been only included in your training routine for the past few years. Do you think it's made a difference with you?
No doubt. It has made a big difference. It has. I mean, just think about it. You're 70 years old and you can have a lifetime vest. I don't think that would have happened had we not introduced this different type of training. So even though you go through a lifetime of a certain routine, don't be afraid to change that routine. Don't be afraid to try new ideas. Again, if you've done this for a while, muscle soreness is actually a good thing. And if you have the same routine day in and day out on just, let's say, for example, the 3 core lifts, you might get some muscle soreness, but it's not going to happen often. You introduce these new aspects of training, you will feel muscle soreness, and that is growth. I'm not talking about pain from an injury. If you feel the muscle soreness because of activity of doing these types of programs, that's growth.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show again. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to drag you back in here for a table talk coming up soon, but really appreciate it, guys. 2024 IPF M4 World Champion Bob Moore. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.